40% Merlot, 40%
Oh,
Malbec,
it's
and 20%
tastes
Absinthe.
good for you.
Welcome to the Wine Enthusiast Podcast, the world in your glass.
This month, Robert Mondavi Winery recognizes America's Young Wine Stars, the annual 40 Under 40. But let's remember, some things, like fine wine, improve with age. Robert Mondavi's life was proof. In 1966, he founded his winery at age 52. To honor his legacy, we've created Maestro Red Blend 2014. We use the best grapes from our finest vineyards, like Cabernet Sauvignon from Napa's top To Cologne. The result? Beautiful dark fruit and plush tannins. Maestro reminds us the best things in life take time. Look for Robert Mondavi Maestro 2014 at fine wine shops everywhere.
Jameson Fink, Senior Digital Editor. What's your first reaction when you walk into a tasting room? Sometimes it can be exciting, sometimes it can be a little intimidating, or maybe even a little confusing. But one thing that really makes a tasting room unique is the music that you hear in it. So I was delighted to speak with Trey Busch of Sleight of Hand Cellars about his unique take on music's place in the tasting room and in his life. So when I walk into many tasting rooms at wineries, it can still be, for me, kind of an intimidating experience. Sometimes it's very sedate, maybe a little stuffy, maybe a little quiet. There are a bunch of laminated PDFs with things like pH and alcohol level and barrel regiments and things like that. But I think part of making wine less intimidating is having a great environment that's welcoming and friendly and maybe a little atypical of what you think wine might be. A lot of times it's what's in the bottle. A lot of times it's certainly the tasting room staff, and sometimes it might be you walk in and you're hearing some music that you wouldn't expect to hear in a tasting room. So, Trey, I wanted to ask you about, when you visit, I guess, either of your sleight of hand tasting rooms, there's going to be music there, and talk about just your kind of philosophy of having music in a tasting room and how important that is to make people feel comfortable.
Yes, so you definitely hit the nail on the head. The idea about tasting wine and the intimidation factor is definitely there. And I knew when Jerry and I started this winery 10 years ago, we knew what we did not want. We maybe didn't know exactly what we wanted, but we knew what we did not want. And what we did not want was the, label with the picture of the winery on it and this, the pretty script and the vineyard and everything that it's everything else, right? So we wanted to express our personalities. And Jerry and I both absolutely love music. And when we opened our downtown tasting room in Walla, I had taken my turntable from home and brought it into the tasting room because I had a brand new baby. And she was just learning how to walk. And my turntable at home was perfect grabbing height for little fingers. And so I said, I need to get this out of here. And I was going to put it in my basement. And then I said, no, I'm going to take it to work. And I had like 100 albums. And when folks would come to the tasting room, I'd have the turntable on. And for me, it wasn't a novelty. For me, it was, this is how I listen to music at home. And so it was just an extension of that. But the funny thing was the reaction from folks, because it's 10 years ago before the true resurgence of vinyl, which we've all seen. And folks would really dig that. They're like, oh my God, is that a turntable? And you're listening to records. I can't believe they, how old are these? And all these really funny questions. But it really helped me realize that folks definitely frame their experience with music. And so for me, if I have a 22-year-old kid that walks into my tasting room, I know he's probably not going to know a whole lot about wine, but I want them to be comfortable. And so if they walk in and the first thing they hear is the Beastie Boys instead of, Sade, no offense to Sade, but, I think maybe what would be typical tasting room music, if I'm going to generalize, all of a sudden their head's completely not even thinking about wine. And what that's really turned into, especially in my Walla tasting room and also our Soto tasting room even, where we have a sub pop shop, is that you walk into our tasting room, the first thing you see is a wall of 2,000 albums. And that's the first thing people gravitate towards. And so now they're not thinking about being intimidated. And wine is, it's like, hey, they're going to check out the albums first. Then we'll migrate over. We'll taste some great wine. What do you want to listen to? Oh, man, I want to listen to the Allman Brothers. Let's listen to the Allman Brothers. So they're almost getting to frame their own experience. And they're comfortable. And at that point, we're having a great conversation about music. And then we're sort of talking about our wine. And they're comfortable. They're in a good space. Hopefully they enjoy what we're pouring. And it's been a good thing for us. So.
I guess I need to back up, and I should have you explain the name of the winery, Sleight of Hand.
Yeah, so my business partner, Jerry, and I, when we were coming up with the name of the winery, I had a few ideas, and I thought they were great. And Jerry said he wasn't feeling it the same way I was, and so he and his wife said, how can we get Trey off of this theme that he's thinking about? And so they came back to me and he handed me this sheet of paper and it had like 4 Pearl Jam songs on it. And I'm like, these are all Pearl Jam songs. And he's like, I know. And I was like, Sleight of Hand, that's one of my favorite songs. So literally the winery is named after a Pearl Jam song. And the magic theme came about obviously because of the name Sleight of Hand. So. And
are you the world's biggest Pearl Jam fan?
I would argue that I am, but I also have a lot of friends that I've met over the 25 years of touring that I know may be on the same level, if not a notch more crazy than I am. So, but yes, it's definitely my love. So.
It seems like every time you have a wine dinner, even in like Bozeman, Montana, I think you're always like finding these cool record shops and stuff. Are you looking at a map and Googling things and be like, if I'm going to be here, I'm going to a record store?
I'm definitely going to a record store any market I visit. So I was in Missoula first, and then I was in Billings doing a dinner that night, and I literally was driving by. I wasn't looking for it, but it was this hole-in-the-wall record store, and those are always the best. And so I literally bombed in, and this 70-year-old woman's behind the counter, and I start talking to her, and I said, is this your shop? She says, it's my son's, but he's, he didn't come into work today or whatever. And I was literally the only customer there for like an hour and a half and loaded up, 30 albums and probably made her entire week. It was awesome. Mm-hmm. So, but yes, I do, between traveling, I definitely look for record stores.
There's probably still that stereotype of like a beer and a shot rock and roll musician. Are they into wine? Are you meeting musicians who are like asking you interesting questions about wine or surprising you?
Yeah. So for sure, everybody knows that Ed loves wine because he has a bottle for Eddie, better Pearl Jam. He always has a bottle of wine on stage. Jeff Ament, bass player, he likes our wine, which is great. I would always have to go to Maynard, who is the lead singer for Tool and A Perfect Circle, who actually has a winery in Arizona, Caduceus Cellars. And what's my favorite winery story from music? Mark Arm from Mudhoney. Uh-huh. Okay, I mean, Mudhoney's is Seattle grunge, punk rock as it gets. They've been around forever, incredible band, still playing live today. And through all the world tours that they've done, Mark has this really great palate. He actually loves wine. And he had a song on his last album called Chardonnay. Wow. This awesome punk rock song about Chardonnay. And I thought, oh, how cool. Mark's singing about Chardonnay. And then I listened to the song. And it's basically, I hate you, Chardonnay. And it's this basically punk rock anti-Chardonnay song, right? So I went to Sub Pop Records to see my friend, and I brought Mark a gift because he works at Sub Pop as his day job, and I brought him a bottle of my Chardonnay. And it wasn't really as a joke. It was like, hey, you know what? Just like music, you can't say I hate rap music, and then all of a sudden there's like, that's a wide variety of rap music. You're going to find something you like. And the same way with Chardonnay. So I gave him this bottle of Chardonnay, and hopefully he drank it, and hopefully he liked it. So I don't know.
We've talked about the tasting room environment, playing records there, but the variety and amount of music I hear in the winery is really astounding. Is there certain Trey's greatest hits that you play on the sorting table, or is there different music for cleaning out tanks, or what are you listening to when you're doing like the nitty gritty of winemaking?
Thankfully, I'm not doing the nitty gritty of winemaking anymore. It's been about 4 or 5 years, but my staff, Keith and Aaron and Taylor, who are in the cellar on a daily basis, always had the radio going. We typically will stream KEXP, which is a Seattle local music station. Actually, they have a they have a home base in New York as well, so your hometown. And so we usually just stream KEXP, and that way we get to hear a little bit of everything all day long. We love the War on Drugs. We play a lot of the War on Drugs. But no, there's no set. No, we usually try to give each of our employees gets some time to pick the music, so it's not dominated by just one employee. So
it helps keep the peace, I'm sure, to let everyone have their turn.
Have to keep the peace, absolutely. Yeah.
And I also wanted to ask about, this is so corny, but I always want to ask this. It's like, what do you see the link between music and wine, or what do you see as that relationship between music and wine for you?
I see a ton of similarities between the two, not just on the business side of things. I've always likened wine and music together from a sales perspective, because when you walk into a record store or you walk into a wine shop and you don't know what you want, it's almost overwhelming, because you are looking at 20,000 different possibilities, and so that's where when you were working at Esquin, or when the beauty is, let's go find the expert. Let's find this guy to help me find something that I love. But from the production standpoint, I've never really thought about it from that side. If I were a band, who would I be from a winemaking standpoint? Because certainly there are wineries that, their philosophies are completely different from my philosophy, and there's 1,000 different ways to make wine, just like there's 1,000 different ways to make music. I definitely, because of where I came, my background with wine with Eric Dunham, Eric was an artistic winemaker. He was not a scientific winemaker. So everything for Eric was always based on feeling and intuition. And it was rarely, he never made a decision based on hard science. And I definitely took that to heart, and that's how I've done it for 17 years. And so I think it's maybe a little more free-flowing, rather than just a rote recipe of how to do something. That's why every year is different, and obviously every vintage is different. And so our wines are going to reflect all those changes and differences. So.
If you're in the tasting room, what's in heavy rotation right now on vinyl? If you're there and you're controlling everything.
Gosh, what have I been listening to a lot? I've been listening to definitely more new music rather than old music. The new Afghan Wigs is incredible. I'm gonna go buy the new Perfume Genius because I saw them this morning at KEXP, and it was incredible. And my daughter turned me on to them, so that's why I know I really did a great job as being a parent, as when your kids start turning you on to really great music. And so that's definitely going to be in rotation. Let's see, what else? What do we play on? I was in the tasting room all day on Saturday. We played a lot of Prince. So Prince actually sees a lot of rotation because everyone loves Prince, and it's a combination of rock and dance and everything, so like our wines.
So this is my first time being back in Washington State and Seattle. We're in Woodinville right now. I left in November of 2015. I lived in Seattle for 10 years. From your perspective, how has Washington wine, changed in the last 10 years? I mean, what's happening now that you're doing that's really surprising or exciting?
There's certainly been a ton of growth in Washington, and it's amazing to look at the number of wineries that are here now. I think that when you have more wineries, you're challenged to push the quality envelope, and it's not necessarily to make a recipe for a certain wine that's going to get these huge scores. It's really more about how are you going to make something that's going to stand out in this huge crowded marketplace. And we always experiment. We always do. Every year we'll find a couple of lots to do something different with, and if it works out, great. And then we'll maybe utilize that the next year, and if it doesn't work out, that's okay. We've got a home for that stuff. But we've been using a lot of concrete, and I would say, if anything, from our Rhone program, since I started the winery in 2007 with Jerry and to what we're doing today, that wine's probably the most dramatically different. We make a Syrah called Levitation, and I remember my early vintages were 40, 50, 60% new oak, all French, but it was still a lot of new wood, a little riper in style, and we have definitely checked back on that. So now we're 10 to 15% new, large format barrels, and a lot of concrete. And so we just bought 2 concrete fermenters and aging tanks that we'll utilize this year, and we'll do a lot of we'll do a lot of Bordeaux varietals in those for fermentation. But from an aging perspective, we'll do Grenache and Syrah in our concrete tanks. I think Syrah is so versatile. It tastes great at 22 bricks. It tastes great at 26.5 bricks. Stylistically, they're different, but they still taste great. You can't really do that with Cab Franc or, Cabernet. I mean, so you have a greater range to play with in that instance. So we've definitely tried to move things on the less ripe side to try to capture more of the savory components of Syrah, because that's what we love about the grape when we taste Rhone wines. Nice fruit, but there's always that savory component. Mm-hmm. And Washington does that so well, site to site to site. And we've got 4 really different and extreme vineyard sites for Syrah, and you would think they're from 4 different countries. Mm-hmm. So it's really fun to play with that.
One of the things that I've noticed since I got here in like 2004 is just like how the quality of rosé, which was, I mean, probably an afterthought at that time. There was I was tasting a lot of things that were like red and white wine mixed together, and it was a rosé. But to me, the rosé calling card grape to me is Cabernet Franc, and I've been pretty excited about that. Can you talk about your rosé and how your rosé program has changed and how important a part of your winery it is now?
Sure. So I've been making Cab Franc rosé since we started the winery back in 2007, and so I think there were only 2 wineries in Walla maybe making rosé back then, like serious rosé. And I picked that grape because Kay Simon at Chinook Winery, she's been making that since the 90s. Mm-hmm. And not only did she make a great Cab Franc, but her Cab Franc rosé was like, holy cow, it's so great. And it was true rosé. It was 12.5%. It was, very light in color, and nobody was making that wine back then. And so that was how we decided on the grape and really even the style. Early on, we were fermenting and aging in neutral barrel. Now we're in concrete and stainless, and we're picking it even earlier. So no skin contact. I think the early two or three vintages, 7, 8, 9, maybe even 10, saw like 30 minutes or an hour of skin contact. So those wines were a little darker in color. My thought process behind that was maybe you're going to pull some flavor compounds out that you wouldn't normally get, but we really didn't. And if anything, we picked up phenolic character that we didn't want in the rosé. Like we want it to be light and crisp. And so we've been working with Black Rock Vineyard since 2009. And it's a 2-acre block. We farm it to be rosé every year, and it's again fermented in concrete, stainless, and then it's aged for maybe 2 months. Does see a little bit of neutral barrel for aging, and then we do a sterile filtration. Have it bottled by the end of January. It's ready to go February 15th.
Awesome. And I guess I'll just bring it back to music. One of the things, when I see sleight of hand on social media, one of my favorite things is when people are visiting the tasting room and, like you said, they're interacting with the albums and, right. The sleeve face.
Sleeve face, so fun.
Yeah. So if you haven't seen it, sort of like you find an album with someone's, a face on it, and then you put it in front of your face, and it makes a really great photo. What are some of your top sleeve face albums?
Ooh, one of my favorites is, and one of my very first concerts, too, was Accept, which was a 80s metal band with this German dude named Udo Dirkschneider. And he was this 5'5" German guy, and his outfit was classic German metal. He had like a leather vest, no shirt, and like short leather pants, like it's sort of like, it was quite the outfit. But the Balls to the Wall album by Accept is one of my favorites because instead of being a face, it's basically like from your midriff down to your knees, and it's this guy holding this big huge like cannonball in his hand, and
it's very subtle.
That's very subtle, very subtle. Anyway, that's one of my favorites that people pull out. So yes.
Awesome. Well, Trey, thanks for chatting with me today about music and wine. And I think it's important. We all, we say so much like we want to demystify wine and and things like that. But I think that the music angle and having people come in and hearing, maybe it's some like 80s German metal album or something exciting or unusual. It just puts people at ease, and because wine can be intimidating. If you can just get them relaxed and looking at albums, then you can pour them something like, oh, this is some Grenache Syrah or Rhone style blend, and they're like, oh, that sounds great, Right. So thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks, Jameson.
This podcast is produced by Large Media, L-A-R-J Media. Wine Enthusiast is made possible by grapes, sunshine, and wine, and by the hard-working editors who bring you news and information on your favorite beverage every day. If you like what we're doing, share our podcast with your friends and give us a review on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. For more fun wine information, follow us on Twitter and Facebook at Wine Enthusiast.